The Legislative Yuan on April 3rd passed the amendment to the Local Government Act. Under the revised law, the Ministry of the Interior is authorized to adjust administrative districts based on the need to better utilize national land and resources. During his presidential campaign, President Ma Ying-jeou pledged to open an indigenous autonomous zone on a trial basis. However, such plan is not included in the amendment.
并将第7条条文修正通过。
On April 3rd, the Legislative Yuan passed the amendment to the Local Government Act, finalizing the legal basis for zoning Taiwan into 3 municipalities, Taipei, Taichung, and Kaohsiung, and 15 counties as proposed by the government of President Ma Ying-jeou. Currently, there are 30 mountain indigenous townships and 25 lowland indigenous townships. Under the new law, national administrative divisions will be reorganized, but the law does not state how the indigenous areas will be demarcated. At the legislative session, some lawmakers feared that the indigenous townships may be marked off from the map, which would also affect future electoral districts from indigenous representatives. Consequently, the amendment was passed with one additional condition, which states that the Council of Indigenous Peoples will convene a public hearing within 2 months to gather views of the indigenous peoples for further revisions to the act.
I'm making pledges to you. We will respect the CIP and let them solicit opinions. Once consensus is made, we will take active steps to further amend the law.
However, indigenous legislator Chen Ying was skeptical of the power of the additional condition.
The additional legislative condition has no binding power over government policy. It's just an empty clause, a formality which serves only as a reference to the authorities.
During his presidential campaign, President Ma pledged to open an indigenous autonomous zone on a trial basis. However, such plan is not mentioned in the amended act. Experts said in the further amendment to the act, a draft act of indigenous autonomous zone should also be considered. The focal point of the future amendment to the act would be to set down the framework of the indigenous autonomous unit and define its relationship with the central government and the local governments. The blueprint for the trial indigenous autonomous zone is not mentioned in the latest amendment. The issue needs to be further discussed by parties concerned in order to reach a consensus. The Ministry of the Interior said once a consensus is made, they would draft a revision for approval at the Legislative Yuan's next session.
It takes time to discuss the proposed autonomous zone, draft implementation measures, and work on revisions to the act. It's unlikely that the new legislation can be enacted in December 2010.
The latest amendment to the Local Government Act lays down the basis for future administrative district rezoning, but related issues such as how to protect the political rights and autonomous rights of the indigenous people are not stated, pending further revisions to the act. TITV Weekly.